Welcome to AFI Fest 2020, presented by Audi. I'm Claudia Puig, Senior Programmer for AFI Fest. First, I want to thank you all, the supporters of the festival, our presenting sponsor, Audi, our AFI members, and you, our audience. We're here today with the director and lead actor of the compelling film, The Intruder. We have director Natalia Meta and actor Érica Rivas. Welcome, bienvenidos. This is such a fascinating psychological thriller. It delves into the horror genre and the supernatural. It's both fascinating and fun, and it plunges into the troubled psyche of a voiceover artist played by Érica. And I love the mischievous spirit of your film too. Natalia, the film is based on the novel El Mal Menor. What was it about this story that inspired you to adapt it into a movie?
Yes, thanks for inviting us. And about this question, I've been thinking, and really what compelled me, it's a wonderful book and it's wonderfully written. It has a lot of humor. It's very frightening, and this is something that I changed quite a bit for the film. But what was really compelling for me was that the author treated the dreams as a place, you know, like a specific world which exists. So he took dreams seriously and thought that they were separate from us, but that really they mixed.
Like their own worlds, kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
That was the idea, to think about dreams as a place.
And you said it was scarier? The book was actually...
The book is a really tough horror story. And I think I took this fantastic element and kept some things about the mystery and mischief, but I didn't keep the tone of tough horror film. This is more like the fantasy element.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's very interesting. Érica, you did a brilliant job embodying the character of Inés. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
It must have been challenging to play someone who's being haunted and experiencing hallucinations and traumatized. And in almost every scene, we see her falling apart as the film goes on. What drew you specifically to this part?
Debía de ser difícil interpretar a una mujer que tiene todas estas alucinaciones y se está como quebrando, y que ha de haber sido complicado interpretar el personaje.
Sí. Pensé que había una pregunta. No. Sí, es complicado y es divertido para una actriz.
Yeah, it was complicated and difficult for an actress.
Pero es muy divertido.
La pregunta fue, ¿qué te atrajo? Sí.
Ok. Y creo que esa complicación...
I think that complexity
is what attracted
to me.
Sí. Y además creo que el lugar de no comodidad.
And also the place of not being comfortable.
Y todo el trabajo que tuve que hacer para meterme en la piel de Inés.
And all the work that I had to do to embody Inés.
Como la voz, y bueno, además estar habitada por lo que es el sueño en lo
I had to work
diurno.
On the voice.
Que me gustó también la propuesta de estar habitada por los sueños en lo cotidiano, en lo diurno.
And I also like the idea of being invaded of dreams in your daily life.
The dreams invading your daily life and the mixture of the two. That was such an important part. Yeah, I love that. Natalia, tell me, what were the biggest challenges for you in making a psychological thriller with the supernatural elements like that?
To make it believable, but the actors helped me with that enormously. So I think that was the most difficult, and also the most successful element in the movie too, because they really I think they convinced me. So
they convinced me too. I think everyone watching. Érica, this feels in some ways almost like there are other characters, of course, and they're very important, but like a one-woman show, because you are, it seems like you're in almost every scene. How did you keep from getting exhausted emotionally because it required so much of you?
Yo elijo ser actriz por esto, para
I
vivir.
I choose to be an actress to live this.
Para vivir emociones distintas, vidas distintas.
To live different emotions, different lives.
Y me interesaba muchísimo la inmersión en este... me interesaba mucho meterme en ese lugar de tanta también... de tanto compromiso emocional.
I was very interested in getting into this place where there was a lot of personal commitment, emotional commitment.
Sí, me gustaba, me parece que es algo lindo también el sentido de estar muy, muy extenuada emocionalmente para ver qué es lo que pasa después.
I really like this idea of being very overtly emotional to figure out what happens afterwards.
Natalia, it's a story of trauma too. I mean, sort of the after effects of trauma. It's sort of, you know, we can interpret it either as a horror or a supernatural story, or just as a sort of a psychological study. How do you blend all that together, and how did you approach it?
For me, it was very important that you couldn't answer this question, no? If everything is in her head or is it real, that you have to try and live contradictions instead of trying to solve them. So this would be, for me, what is fun, the way the film works, what I wanted to do. So, and I think image allows this, sound allows for this, you know, to show contradiction. In a way, communicative language has a difficulty. So
Absolutely, yeah.
That was the way I try to work.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because that's one of the things that stood out for me, that sound is so important in the plot of the film. Inés is a voiceover artist. She's being haunted by inner noises inside of her, and the sound design that you come up with is so evocative, and it intensifies the uncomfortableness, the unsettling feeling that we have. So how did you sit down with the sound designer? How did you come up with the sound for the film?
Well, how I came up is quite a story, because in my previous film, Muerte en Buenos Aires, I had an actor, Damian Bichir, who is Mexican, mm-hmm. and he came to Argentina to play an Argentinian. And we didn't have enough time for him to practice the accent. So he was very keen on using his own voice. And so he promised me that we would do the dubbing after the film was finished, for all the places where we found that he didn't sound okay. So, but then he had to go back to LA, and we had to do everything via like virtually, you know. He was in LA, and we were dubbing the film in Argentina. So it was quite a piece of work, and I think it was one of the longest dubbings in the story of Argentinian.
Wow.
For me, it was traumatic, because it was my first film, and I said, what are we going to do with this problem? Is it going to work? And what happened actually was that I became fascinated, and I learned a lot about dubbing, and I became quite fascinated with everything they did. And something I found was that sometimes we had to take out a consonant or a vowel from one of his words and changing for another one. And when you do that, you have to like stretch the sound. And so you listen to the sound in slow motion. And this was very scary for me. for me, and I was fascinated by the fact that something that wasn't, from the outer world, it wasn't something, it wasn't a phantom or anything. It was just, as a process, a technical process for me was terrifying. And I showed it to everyone. And so I found that something you can do, find something that are very scary and look supernatural in our daily lives, and that in the nature of our voices, if you listen carefully, there's much more than what we think. So that's the story about how the dubbing came into the film.
That's so interesting. Well, was the character of Inés in the book, was she also a voiceover artist, or did you bring that to it?
Not at all. She is the owner of a restaurant.
Ah, interesting.
She doesn't know. This is something that came to the film through the window.
I wanted to ask you too, Érica, did you bring, was there a room for improvisation? Did you add any of your own dialogue or your own ideas to the character?
Sorry.
Algo de tu cosecha, de tus ideas.
Okay. No.
We work together side by side. Yes.
Yes. Nah. It's not real.
No. No, because Érica takes very seriously that she likes to have every word, in the script, and not improvise. This is very important for her, and it's great. It's a no, but what I mean is that we work together in thinking about how the character had to be.
Yes.
We shared our anguish because we sometimes didn't know what we had to do, and we were like led by our intuitions. And that was like the best part of the film for me.
Sí, sí.
Working together, collaborating, yeah.
Yes. Nos hicimos amigas.
Ah, qué bien.
Felt like
Sí.
I can see that you guys are good friends.
Qué bueno.
Did you rehearse then on set, or do you, I know some people feel strongly about it, some people don't like to rehearse. Natalia?
No.
We rehearsed.
Or Érica, the two of you.
No.
We spent like 3 months rehearsing before the film and thinking, and Érica also investigated a lot. She's a genius. If you have to investigate something, I would she found like everything we need. And so we investigated, we thought, we rehearsed, and then we rehearsed on with the other actors, and then we rehearsed on set.
Okay.
We did, yes, because I think like that everything you do before you shoot is like very precious. After that, it's like life.
Like that. You talked about the tone in the book, and it was darker, sounds like maybe more terrifying. But I think the tone in a film like this is complex, and it's important to get it just right. How did you get to the tone that you have, that sense of mischief, and how did you arrive at that, Natalia?
I think I also try to do the same. There is a lot of pressure for you to set on one tone and one genre, and even if people now like to mix genres and to mix tones, there is a lot of pressure that there is one thing, and I tried to do the same, to use the same mechanism I talked about before with the tone, not to resolve contradictions, to have always 2 levels of understanding. Sometimes something can be very scary at the same time, or the next thing is fun. So I like to maintain this duality and not to resolve it. No? Mm-hmm. So for me, that's important, and it's fun. And I think humor also helps to establish another level of reality sometimes, another level of understanding. It's also another place.
Mm-hmm. It's true, because in life, you don't just feel one thing. You can be scared and also find something funny, or there's a lot of emotions that come to play. The other thing that struck me about your film was the pacing, because the pacing is so important in a thriller. To have the sense of suspense heightened. So I wondered how closely you work with the editor on, you know, the cutting and the pacing?
I work very close with the editor, and Eliane Katz was the editor for this film. She's a wonderful editor. She's a genius, and she takes pace very seriously. I would say that's what she takes more seriously, and she's also very fast. So she really has a heightened perception of everything. So I think she goes very fast, and I say, okay, stop, and that's how we get the pace right for the film.
I thought it was perfect, because I just, you know, when something is frightening and suspenseful, I think sometimes it has to be a little bit slower to build that up. And I thought it worked really well. In the scenes where Natalia is with Leopardo, is that his name? You know, all of that is building up, and but it's not going too fast or too slow. It was just right. It definitely built, and you also are wondering what's real. So I think it gives you time to wonder about that. So you don't want it to go by so quickly, you don't have time to think. Natalia, or Érica, I was curious about how you got into the character's head, into Inés. Did you create a backstory for her?
Sí, teníamos la novela, que era como una especie de mapa que nos ayudaba también a seguir su historia, y además con Natalia inventamos mucho sobre la historia particular de esta mujer que es inspirada en aquella otra. Yo creo que más que nada lo más difícil para mí fue poder entender en qué momento de su vida está, y que ese momento es un momento que es un momento muy particular y tiene implicancias físicas en muchas dimensiones de lo físico, lo auditivo, lo genital, bueno, eso que se produce con el ánimo de amar, ¿no? Y con el corte, cuando no hay corte entre la vigilia y la vida diurna, y los sueños, también cómo se trastoca eso a nivel físico. Por eso antes te decía que las jornadas extenuantes de filmación eran interesantes también estar adentro de su cabeza, porque creo que ella está en ese lugar de mucho estrés psíquico.
Okay. Do you want to translate? I know you're taking notes.
Yes, we had the novel that was sort of like a roadmap that helped us with her story, but we also worked a lot with Natalia and I to imagine this particular woman's story. Above all, I think the hardest thing for me was to understand at what point of her life she was in, to reflect how it affected her auditory and also in the genitals, and when was that, the difference between the dream and the real life. So this was something that we focused on a lot, and the difference between the physical and the dream world.
Yeah, there definitely is that intermission.
Perdón, me olvidé que me tenías que traducir.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that Érica was... there's a point that is very interesting, that is the fact that she was living in both worlds, the dream-like and the real world, so that affects the character physically.
I wanted to ask also Érica and Natalia about working with Cecilia Roth, because she's such a veteran, established actress, and you had such an interesting chemistry with her as her playing your mother. What was that process like? Érica, in terms of, did you rehearse with her? How did you establish that connection? Because it felt like you really were her daughter. There were a lot of those stressful mother-daughter moments that are real, that felt real.
Básicamente,
la relación entre Cecilia Roth y
Roth, dice que parecía realmente su hija.
Sí.
I think
la relación, y que cómo te sentiste trabajando con ella.
Porque parecías como de veras fuiste su hija. Era una ¿cómo se dice chemistry? ¿Cómo se
Química, había mucha química
sí,
de madre e hija.
Sí.
Lo estoy escuchando mucho.
No
A
puede
ver
ser.
qué pasa.
Okay, maybe you can talk about it,
Espera,
Natalia.
no,
Yeah.
I will
esperame un
talk about
segundo.
it, and while Érica, I think there was a great chemistry between them. We rehearsed also a lot, and Cecilia's mother works a lot with the voice, so she also proposed this idea of the mother who helps her, and this was very fruitful. So I think that was great, and she also she gave the character a lot of strength. I think this is one of her characteristics. So I think it was a great chemistry with her and with the other actors too, with Nahuel, with Dani, and with all the actors in the film.
The casting was fantastic. So what was for you, Natalia, the most satisfying part of making this film?
The most satisfying, I think it's two things. When the first, all the previous work we did, as I said, it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful to try and find what we wanted, how we wanted to tell the story, and how was this character and what we had to do. And the second is I discovered some things, like doing it. I found out things about what our subject study. And the main thing is I discovered something that is important, and is to take dreams and fantasy seriously. This is what I discovered. This was what I, in a way, I think that I was worried about, that you should take them seriously. Sometimes when I talk about levels of reality, some people say things like, well, it's a joke, don't take it seriously, it's not true, it's just a story, it's just no, I think this is, it's a story, it's a fantasy, but these fantasies are what open possibilities, and what opens possibility is what possibilities is what makes possibilities are what make desire work. No, not reality, not the material reality, and we give a lot more importance to the concrete things, and this is not really the structure of our life. The structure of our life is desire, and desire works by the laws of fantasy, which opens possibilities for desire. So I think this is what I learned during the film, that what I discovered in a way what was in my head, and what I wanted to in a way to say, that you should. It's not if they how dreams become true, or how they intermingle with reality. It's just that one should take them seriously, even more seriously sometimes than concrete reality. So that's the two best things.
That's so interesting, because in a sense, that's what films are about. They sort of bring those two worlds together. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate it, and I know you both are in Argentina, and it's a long ways away. And I'm sorry for any technical difficulties we've had here, but it's been really fascinating to talk to you. Thanks everyone for being here today. Please tell your friends. The film is available to screen until the end of the festival, which is October 22nd. And we'd love to hear from you on social media, #AFIFest. Please join us for more great films and virtual events at fest.afi.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Gracias.
Gracias. Muchísimas gracias.